Presidential Actions, Hiring Freeze, January 20th, 2025. By the authority vested in me as President by the Constitution and the laws of the United States of America, I hereby order a freeze on the hiring of federal civilian employees to be applied throughout the executive branch. As part of this freeze, no federal civilian position that is vacant at noon on January 20th, 2025 may be filled, and no new position may be created except as otherwise provided for in this memorandum or other applicable law. Except as provided below, this freeze applies to all executive departments and agencies regardless of their sources of operational and programmatic funding. This order does not apply to military personnel of the armed forces or to positions related to immigration enforcement, national security, or public safety. Moreover, nothing in this memorandum shall adversely impact the provisions of Social Security, Medicare, or veterans benefits. In addition, the Director of the Office of Personnel Management, OPM, may grant exemptions from this freeze where those exemptions are otherwise necessary. Within 90 days of the date of this memorandum, the Director of the Office of Management and Budget, OMB, in consultation with the Director of OPM and the Administrator of the United States DOGE Service, USDS, shall submit a plan to reduce the size of the federal government's workforce through efficiency improvements and attrition. Upon issuance of the OMB plan, this memorandum shall expire for all executive departments and agencies, with the exception of the Internal Revenue Service, IRS. This memorandum shall remain in effect for the IRS until the Secretary of the Treasury, in consultation with the Director of OMB and the Administrator of USDS, determines that it is in the national interest to lift the freeze. Contracting outside the federal government to circumvent the intent of this memorandum is prohibited. In carrying out this memorandum, the heads of executive departments and agencies shall seek efficient use of the existing personnel and funds to improve public services and the delivery of these services. Accordingly, this memorandum does not prohibit making reallocations to meet the highest priority needs, maintain essential services, and protect national security, homeland security, and public safety. This memorandum does not limit the nomination and appointment of officials to positions requiring presidential appointment or Senate confirmation. The appointment of officials to non-career positions in the senior executive service or to Schedule A or C positions in the accepted service. The appointment of officials through temporary organization hiring authority pursuant to Section 3161 of Title V, United States Code, or the appointment of any other non-career employees or officials if approved by agency leadership appointed by the President. Moreover, it does not limit the hiring of personnel where such a limit would conflict with applicable law. This memorandum does not abrogate any collective bargaining agreement in effect on the date of this memorandum. I had a difficult time finding the current director of the Office of Personnel Management, but on the OPM site, according to them, the person signing the memos is Charles Ezel as acting director of the U.S. Office of Personnel Management. According to the OPM website, what they do is read as the following. Our work. OPM leads workforce management for the federal government. Whether you're a federal job seeker, a current or retired federal employee, a human resources professional, or a member of the public, our work affects you. Our responsibilities cover 3 broad categories. We set and enforce the background check processes that determine individuals' fitness to serve in the federal workforce. We provide human resource policies services, and oversight to federal agencies so they can hire and manage their workforces effectively. We develop and administer quality, cost-effective employee benefits programs, including the Federal Retiree Pension Program. The OPM website states the following for mission, vision, and values. Mission: we are champions of talent for the federal government. We lead federal agencies in workforce policies, programs, and benefits in service to the American people. Vision: we will create a new vision of work together. We will position in the federal government as a model employer for past and present employees through innovation, inclusivity, and leadership. We will build a rewarding culture that empowers the workforce to solve some of our nation's toughest challenges. Values: respect. OPM honors and respects our employees and customers. Innovation: OPM employs innovative solutions and strategies to address government-wide talent management challenges and build the workforce of the future. Service: OPM fulfills its mission by delivering outstanding customer service to federal agencies, the federal workforce, federal retirees, and federal job seekers. Excellence: OPM achieves results by using our expertise, data, and best practices. OPM's history. OPM was established as a standalone agency in 1978 to oversee federal workforce management, but our roots date back to 1883 when the Civil Service Reform Act created the Competitive Civil Service. This law requires the federal government to hire public servants based on their skills and not their political affiliations. A strong, merit-based civil service is critical to a functioning democracy. It ensures that our government, of the people, by the people, and for the people, continues to serve the American public without interruption, even though our leaders change over time. It also safeguards the public interest in a federal workforce that looks like America and that benefits from the talents, ideas, and skills of people from all of our nation's communities. The history of OPM and its predecessor, the Civil Service Commission, reflects our country's social, economic, and population growth, the changing needs of the American workforce, and key moments in the development of modern workforce management. The Office of Management and Budget seems to be temporarily down for its website, so this is the information I could find. For leadership, Matthew Vaith was appointed to serve as acting OMB Director on January 20th, 2025. Background of OBM. The present Office of Management and Budget was organized in 1970 under President Richard Nixon. Its predecessor, the Bureau of the Budget, was established in 1921 as an agency of the Treasury Department. In 1939, control of the Bureau of the Budget was transferred from the Treasury to the Executive Office of the President. The organization's responsibilities were expanded during the 1990s to include management as well as budgetary roles. Former directors of the OMB who later held higher offices in the federal government include George Shultz, Secretary of State, Caspar Weinberger, Secretary of Defense, Jack Lew, Secretary of the Treasury, and Leon Panetta, Secretary of Defense. OBM work. In addition to assisting the President in developing and implementing the annual federal budget, the OMB oversees executive agency performance, federal procurement, financial management, and information policy, reviews significant regulations issued by executive agencies, coordinates agency communications with Congress, and assists the President with executive orders and presidential memoranda. Title V U.S. Code 3161, Employment and Compensation of Employees. A. Definition of temporary organization. For the purposes of this subchapter, the term temporary organization means a commission, committee, board, or other organization that 1. Is established by law or executive order for a specific period not in excess of 3 years for the purpose of performing a specific study or other project, and 2. Is terminated upon the completion of the study or project, or upon the occurrence of a condition related to the completion of the study or project. B. Employment authority. 1. Notwithstanding the provisions of Chapter 51 of this title, the head of a temporary organization may appoint persons to positions of employment in a temporary organization in such numbers and with such skills as are necessary for the performance of the functions required of a temporary organization. 2. The period of an appointment under paragraph 1 may not exceed 3 years, except that under regulations prescribed by the Office of Personnel Management, the period of appointment may be extended for up to an additional 2 years. 3. The positions of employment in a temporary organization are in accepted service of the civil service. C. Detail authority. Upon the request of the head of a temporary organization, the head of any department or agency of the government may detail, on a non-reimbursable basis, any personnel of the department or agency to that organization to assist in carrying out its duties. D. Compensation. 1. The rate of basic pay for an employee appointed under subsection B shall be established under the regulations prescribed by the Office of Personnel Management without regard to the provisions of Chapter 51 and Subchapter 3 of Chapter 53 of this title. 2. The rate of basic pay for the chairman, a member, an executive director, a staff director, or another executive level position of a temporary organization may not exceed the maximum rate of basic pay established for the senior executive service under Section 5382 of this title. 3. Except as provided in paragraph 4, the rate of basic pay for other positions in a temporary organization may not exceed the maximum rate of basic pay for grade GS-15 of the General Schedule under Section 5332 of this title. 4. The rate of basic pay for a senior staff position of a temporary organization may, in a case determined by the head of the temporary organization as exceptional, exceed the maximum rate of basic pay authorized under the paragraph 3, but may not exceed the maximum rate of basic pay authorized for an executive level position under paragraph 2. 5. In this subsection, the term basic pay includes locality pay provided for under Section 5304 of this title. E. Travel expenses. An employee of a temporary organization, whether employed on a full-time or part-time basis, may be allowed travel and transportation expenses, including per diem in lieu of subsistence, at rates authorized for employees of agencies under Subchapter 1 of Chapter 57 of this title, while traveling away from the employee's regular place of business in the performance of services for the temporary organization. F. Benefits. An employee appointed under subsection B shall be afforded the same benefits and entitlements as are provided temporary employees under this title. G. Return rights. An employee serving under a career or career conditional appointment of the equivalent in an agency who transfers to or converts to an appointment in a temporary organization with the consent of the head of the agency is entitled to be returned to the employee's former position or a position of like seniority, status, and pay without grade or pay retention in the agency if the employee, 1. is being separated from the temporary organization for reasons other than misconduct, neglect of duty, or malfeasance, and 2. applies for return not later than 30 days before the earlier of A, the date of the termination of the employment in temporary organization, or B, the date of termination of the temporary organization. H. Temporary and intermittent services. The head of a temporary organization may procure for the organization temporary and intermittent services under Section 3109B of this title. I. Acceptance of volunteer services. 1. The head of a temporary organization may accept volunteer services appropriate to the duties of the organization without regard to Section 1342 of Title 3.1. 2. Donors of a voluntary services accepted for a temporary organization under this subsection may include the following: A. Advisors, B. Experts, C. Members of the commission, committee, board, or other temporary organization, as the case may be, D. A person performing services in any other capacity determined appropriate by the head of the temporary organization. 3. The head of the temporary organization, A, shall ensure that each person performing voluntary services accepted under this subsection is notified of the scope of the voluntary services accepted. B, shall supervise the volunteer to the same extent as employees receiving compensation for similar services. And C, shall ensure that the volunteer has appropriate credentials or is otherwise qualified to perform in each capacity for which the volunteer services are accepted. 4. A person providing volunteer services accepted under the subsection shall be considered an employee of the federal government in the performance of those services for the purposes of the following provisions of law. A. Chapter 81 of this title, relating to compensation for work-related injuries. B. Chapter 171 of Title 28, relating to tort claims. C. Chapter 11 of Title 18, relating to conflicts of interest.